Okay, so in this case, as we had our previous class, I want us to see something here before I talk about these guys. So I want us to see something. Remember, I referred something here in our previous class, if you still remember, for those who watched the previous class, where we talked of the positive angles for our reduction. You were working with what? Positive angles. And we said, according to the quadrants, we can have them in this way as our quadrants, which in each and every quadrant, we are going to represent our positive angle. First quadrant is theta, or 360 plus theta. The second, 180 minus theta. Third, 180 plus theta. The fourth, 360 degrees minus theta. We were taking these angles in the what? Anti-clockwise direction from the positive x-axis, or your positive horizontal x-axis. With this concept, we have it again for these negative angles. Guys, the quadrant is still one and the same thing. I do not want you to have a confusion there. I do not want you to have any confusion. The quadrant is still one and the same thing, referring from our reference axis in this case. But we are taking these as negative angles, meaning say the direction has changed. We are now moving in the clockwise direction. That is where our angles are being referred as negative. So meaning to say in our concept is has changed. We are now saying this is 0 degrees as our reference, but we are moving this way. So you'll be having 90 degrees here, but we'll be knowing that it's what? Minus 90 degrees. 180 degrees, but we'll be knowing it's what? Minus 180. 270 degrees up to 360 degrees. These angles, they will be carrying negative angles, negative, negative, negative. There will be negative angles. The acute angles, they are not affected. Those, your reference angles or the acute angles, guys, your theta in each quadrant, these ones, they are not being affected. No. These ones, they are not being affected, guys. They remain as they are in each quadrant because they are between what? The horizontal and your line. Horizontal and your line, the terminal. So these ones, they are not affected, these theta. What is affected is our actual angles, because we said previously here, as we were referring these actual angles, it's only that maybe I removed that information. But as you can see, we were taking these actual angles from where the positive x-axis in the anti-clockwise direction. But we take from what? Positive. Always. So it is the same thing even for our negative angles, guys. We are going to take them what? From the positive, which is our reference. But this time we are moving in clockwise direction. So meaning to say we're going to notice something like this from here to here. This is the angle that we are going to take in the what? Fourth quadrant. Taken in the clockwise direction. This will be your angle. So our actual angle in this case will be what? The same angle, which is this theta as it is. But because it's a negative angle, it will be referred as what? Minus theta. So this angle in the fourth quadrant is what? Minus theta, or minus x. Minus theta. We are moving this way, negative. Clockwise, they are negative. We move on to the angle in the third quadrant, and from what? From the positive horizontal axis until we meet this line. This is the direction that we are taking this time. So this whole angle that we are seeing, the difference that we are seeing there of this angle as a negative angle. All right. Start by, it is just like this one so that you understand. It is just like this. The angle here is what? Is theta. But because of a negative angle, you just put what? A negative there. So just find this angle, the way that you understand this angle here, the whole of this angle. How are you going to find it? Forget about being negative or being positive. Just find the angle. Let's say you're given something like this. There's a line. And you've got theta. How do you find this angle? Remember, this is a straight line. So out of 180 degrees, the remaining angle was supposed to be what? 180 degrees minus theta. What is remaining here? Out of 180. But because this is a negative angle, we are going to put a negative on our answer. Just like here, we put a negative. So if we put a negative on this answer that we have, we put a negative like this. What are we going to have at the end? Negative times 180. We are going to have negative 180 degrees. Negative times negative, that's a positive theta. This is what you're going to have at the end. So in this quadrant, our angle is referred as what? Minus 180 degrees plus theta. But how best can we write, guys? Minus 180 plus. There is a positive here. So we can start with what? With a positive. Theta minus what? Minus 180. We can write it that way. So this is the actual angle that you get in the third quadrant as a negative angle. Look, we introduced what? A negative here. That's a negative angle. So it will be written as what? Theta minus 180 degrees. So don't be surprised when you see a presentation like this on your questions. Theta minus 180. It's a negative angle, which lies in the what? In the third quadrant. So guys, what does it mean when I'm saying it lies in the third quadrant? It means it has the same properties as the positive angle which we had before in the third quadrant. Remember, in our previous class, the angle which was lying in the third quadrant was what? Was 180 degrees plus what? Plus theta as a positive angle. It means these two, they are equal, guys. That is what it means. It means theta minus 180 degrees and that 180 degrees plus theta in terms of the properties of the angle. I'm not saying in the view to say when you look at it, they're equal. No, in terms of the properties of the angle to say this one, if you put a sign here and if you put a sign here, your answers will be the same. If you put a tan here and you put a tan here, your answers will be the same. If you put a cos here, your answers will be the same. That's what I'm trying to say. They have the same properties, only that another one is positive, another one is negative. But they have same properties, meaning to say, in this quadrant, if we say it is the quadrant of tan, and before we said tan of 180 degrees plus theta, remember this one is a positive angle. As we had before, we are saying tan 180 degrees plus theta is what? It's tan of theta because it's in the third quadrant. Guys, it means the same thing because these two, they are what? They are equal. They are equal. They equally possess the same answer in actual fact. They're only different to say we see it, this one as a positive, we see this one as a negative, but their answers here, they are same. Why? They lie in the same quadrant. Where they lie, tan is positive there. That is the properties of being positive, negative. But there's nothing that is a change, guys. So don't even worry about it. We are talking about negative angle, so it's like something has changed. No. We are going to reduce the same way as we had in the fourth quadrant. It is the quadrant for what? For cos. Cos is going to be positive there. The rest will be negative. So this is it, guys. All right, I'm going to explain that later on. Let's move on to the second quadrant. Remember, from the positive, we want the actual angle. The actual angle from the positive horizontal axis until we meet this angle like this. This is where we are going to meet in the second quadrant. In terms of just knowing our angles, it was supposed to be what? 180 plus theta. We are supposed to take this angle as 180 degrees plus theta because there's a theta there inside of 180. We are going to add, after the 180, there's a theta which is extended. You're supposed to add it. But these are negative angles. So what do? You introduce a negative. So this angle will be minus like this, minus times 180, which is what? Minus 180 minus theta. In this case, guys, we cannot say we can start with theta because that theta is also negative. You can write it like minus theta minus 180. It's one and the same. You can leave it like this. So as a negative angle, in the second quadrant, our angle is what? Minus 180 degrees minus theta. Or you can write it as what? Minus theta minus 180 degrees. That's how you present your angles in the second quadrant as a negative angle. As a what? Negative angle. Same if you refer the same thing to the first quadrant, you move like this until you get to the first quadrant. This was going to be the actual angle. What is this angle? It was supposed to be 360 degrees minus theta because of that. It was supposed to be 360 degrees minus theta. But it's a negative angle. You introduce a negative there. You just put a negative. So negative times 360, that's negative 360. Negative times negative, that's positive theta. So because we have got a positive here, we can start with what? Theta, which is positive. So it's theta minus what? 360 degrees. So in the first quadrant, as a negative angle, our angle will be called what? Theta minus 360. Theta minus 360 degrees. This will be our angle in the first quadrant. As a what? As a negative angle. Just like that. So like I said, guys, we are still back to the same part that we had in our previous class. We still have the same properties. The cast concept. We still follow that cast concept. We still follow that part, guys. We still have it. So using the cast, what does it mean? What does it mean? It means in the first quadrant, we are going to be using theta minus 360. But nothing has changed. Nothing has changed in terms of our reduction formula. So let's list our reduction formula, all right? So the first quadrant this time as negative angles, our angle is going to be what? Theta minus 360. So guys, what am I trying to say? You are going to have the same answers as you wrote these ones. Lastly, these reductions, these ones. In the first quadrant, these answers, they are going to remain as they are because we are in the first quadrant. All of them, they are positive. In the second quadrant, these answers, they are not going to change. What has changed is the presentation here because we are dealing with what? Negative angles. But this part here is not going to change. So we're going to repeat the same table like this one. The same table like this. So for us not to waste much time, let me just make adjustment on this one. As I have listed, guys, you now know that these are what? These are your negative angles. I have listed for you to say the first quadrant, the second quadrant, or maybe guys, let me just have it because you have confusion at the end if I have it on the same table. Let me just write them here. So let's write, let's start with the sign. So that's the sign of theta minus 360 degrees. Remember, we are in the first quadrant where all are positive. Sine is positive, so it's going to be sine theta. Remember, we write as what? An acute angle, a ratio of acute. Our acute angle is theta. Our acute angle is what? Theta. All right, we move on to cos. The cos of theta minus 360 degrees in the first quadrant is going to remain as a cos, positive. The tan is going to also remain as a positive because we are in the first quadrant. All are positive. In the second quadrant, remember this is the presentation of your second quadrant, like I said, our second quadrant. This is the quadrant for what? For sine, but the angle is what? Minus 180 degrees minus theta. Like I said, this one can be written as what? Minus theta minus 180. So do not worry, this is just one and the same. Minus theta minus 180. This is what we have in the what? Second quadrant. It is the quadrant for what? It is the quadrant for sine. Just like the previous class, guys. Sine is what there? Sine is positive. The rest are negative. The rest. So meaning to say the sine of minus 180 degrees minus theta is equal to what? Positive sine theta. Because sine is positive in the second quadrant. The rest are negative, meaning to say cos is negative. Cos minus 180 minus theta will carry a negative. So that's negative. Cos theta, same with the tan. It's not their quadrant. This is not the quadrant for tan. It's not for tan. So it means tan will carry what? Tan will carry a negative. Just like that. You move on to the third quadrant. Theta minus 180. And it is the quadrant for tan. Only tan is positive. So this is what we have in the third quadrant. So the third quadrant is the quadrant for what? For tan. All right. Remember our angle said what? Theta minus 180. Theta minus 180 degrees. And this is the quadrant for a tan, meaning to say the sign is negative this time. Our sign is going to be negative. So the sign of theta minus 180 degrees, because we are talking about a tan in this quadrant. We are talking about a sign in this quadrant. Sorry, here we talk about all. Second quadrant is the one for what? For sine. Here it's for tan. So it means sine will be what? Negative. So that's negative sine of what? Theta, the acute angle. Cos again will be negative there. Cos is going to be what? Negative. It is only tan which is positive. So tan theta minus 180 degrees is going to remain positive. This will be positive. That's for our third quadrant. Moving on to the fourth quadrant. As a negative angle, our angle is what? Minus theta. And that is the quadrant for cos in the fourth quadrant. Minus theta. That is our angle there. All right. So you're going to consider the fourth quadrant. Just like that. So we saw that the fourth quadrant, the angle is what? Minus theta. If you're given your angle as minus theta, or it can be extended as minus 360. They can give you as minus 360 degrees minus theta. It is one and the same. So in that case, in the fourth, remember we're dealing with what? With cos. It is the quadrant of a cos. Meaning to say sine is negative. The sign of minus theta is negative. Sine is negative in this quadrant. We move on to the cos. The cos of minus theta. Cos is what? Is the one which is positive in the fourth quadrant. It is only cos. Sine and tan, they are what? They are negative. So this tan is going to remain negative. Tan of minus theta. That's a negative. So we have reduced. As we can see, guys, nothing has changed on this table. Nothing. Nothing. It is only that we are dealing with what? Negative angles. In terms of our reduction, nothing has changed. This is what I'm trying to say. In terms of the reduction, in terms of these answers here, in the first quadrant, your answers are still the same. In the second quadrant, your answers are still the same. The third, your answers are still the same. Only what is just changed is the angle. So guys, knowing negative angles means knowing the angle which lies in that quadrant. Because the rest here is a repetition. Just know which angle is it that I have in the fourth quadrant, minus theta. In the third quadrant, theta minus 180, I showed you guys how to obtain these angles in case you have forgotten. If you know, guys, if you know these angles, then you're done. Guys, the same way that you know your positive angles, the same way that you have memorized your positive angles to say, in the first quadrant, my angle is theta. In the second quadrant, 180 minus theta. It is the same way that you're supposed to memorize these ones or to know these ones in whatever way that you did to understand those ones. They're just one and the same. It's only that if you're being at school, maybe you might not even be taught about this. They just skip that. focusing on positive angles only. No, there are also negative angles as part of your syllabus. So you need to know both to answer these questions. You need to know the difference between 180 minus x and x minus 180. One is positive, one is negative. But they're on the same question, you see now. You see now. So you need to know each part, each and every part. All right, so let's try to attempt these questions that we are given. On question number 1, just going to answer here, guys. We are given, simplify the expressions as far as possible. 2 sine 180 degrees minus x. 180 degrees minus x. We know this is what? A positive angle. 180 minus x. This is from our positive angles, remember? 180 degrees minus theta in the second quadrant. So in the second quadrant, remember from our cast concept, this is the one that has got cos, right? This is the one for all, second for sine, and this is what? The third for tan. So remember, we are in the second quadrant for sine. It is only sine which is positive. So this sign is going to remain as a positive. So that's 2 sine of what? 2 sine of x times cos minus x. What are we talking about? This is a negative angle. You won't find it here on our, all right, where did I put there? On our positive angles. You won't find it here. On our positive angles, we've got 180 plus theta. These are positive angles. So that is why I was saying you're supposed to ought to know the difference between these two. This one is what? It's a negative angle. We are talking of what? A negative angle there. So meaning to say, we are going to apply our negative angles. Let's go to our negative angles. Minus theta. This is the fourth quadrant. The quadrant for what? This is the quadrant for cos, remember. So cos is positive there. It's a negative angle. Cos is what? Positive in the fourth quadrant. So that's cos of x as a positive. We are focused to say, where does it lie? It lies in the fourth quadrant. In the fourth quadrant, cos is what? Positive. It's a negative angle in the presentation to say it's cos minus x, but where does it lie? In which quadrant? All right, let's move on to this one. Sine minus 180 minus x. That's a negative angle, this one, if you see properly. Minus 180 minus x. We are back here. Minus 180 minus theta in the second quadrant. This is the quadrant for what? For sine, remember. In the second, sine is positive. So what are we given? We are given a sign. It remains as what? As positive. So it's going to be sine of x. We are reducing times x minus 180. Cos x minus 180. That's a negative angle, this one. X minus 180. X minus theta minus 180. In the third quadrant. The quadrant for what? For tan. Where tan is positive. So it is only tan which is positive, where you see this x minus 1 is, but there we are given a cos. So if only tan is positive, what about cos? Cos will be what? Cos will be negative. So that's negative cos x. All right, so we can simplify further, guys. We can cancel. As you can see, this is a product that we are having. So we can cancel as long as possible. Sine and sine, cos and cos. So that was going to give us 2 times 1, which is 2 over 1 times negative 1. That's negative 1. So that was going to give us what? A negative 2. Just like that. So that is how you can simplify. As you can see, we are now mixing positive, negative angles at the same time. So you must be able to figure out, this is a positive angle. What is it that I have on the positive angles? All right, so on this part, what are we going to have here? We've got sine of x plus 180 plus x, sorry. This is 180 plus x. This is a positive angle, 180 plus theta, 180 plus x in the third quadrant, where tan is the one which is positive, tan. So there we are given sine. So it means the sine is what? Negative. That's negative sine x times the cos of minus x. The cos of minus x. This is what? A negative angle, guys. This one we talked about it here. We saw that is going to give us what? The cos of x. Everything over what? Tan minus x. Minus x. The fourth quadrant. We're in the fourth quadrant. Tan minus theta is what? Minus tan theta. Remember, in the fourth quadrant, tan will be negative. So that's negative there. Tan of x. All right. So take note, we've got an addition there. So we are going to add whatever that we have here. We're going to add sine of x minus 360. That's a negative angle, this one. X minus 360. In which quadrant? X minus 360 in the first quadrant. Theta minus 360. This is the quadrant for all. All are positive. So meaning to say whatever that we have there is going to remain positive. This is sine. So it is just going to remain as what? As positive in the first quadrant. There we have got sine of x minus 180 degrees. A negative angle again. X minus 180. We talked about this before, guys. Theta minus 180. This is what? Third quadrant for tan. This is only for tan. What are we given? A sine. So a sine will give us what? A negative. Just like that. So remember, this is a product here. So we can simplify, guys, in as much as we can. Negative to negative can cancel. All right. So there we have got sine and cos. There we have got a tan. All right. Let's see, guys. Remember that there's something about a tan. A tan consists of a sine and a cos. So let us just separate this way. Sine of x times cos of x divided to tan x. Remember, tan means what? Sine of x over the cos of x. This is our tan here. Okay? So this is a single part that you must simplify. Then we combine this. This is a product, positive to negative. That's a negative. Sine times sine is going to give us what? Sine squared of x. So we can simplify, guys. Remember, if you are given a division, introduce a multiplication. So we are going to have sine of x, cos of x times. The moment you multiply, you invert the second fraction. So it will be the cos of x over the sine of x. Remember, over 1. This is same as over 1. And we're going to subtract what? The sine squared of x. Okay, let's see the miracle that is going to happen here. The sine of x and the sine of x is common. So this is going to cancel. So we are going to have cos of x and cos of x. Cos times cos. That is going to give us the cos squared of x over what? Over 1. So it's just cos squared. Minus sine squared of x, like this. This is where you are. Simplification, where it is possible, guys, let it be used. Wherever it is possible. So you can leave your answer like this. Or in this case, it is up to you, guys. Either you can leave your answer like this, or you can change one of these, guys. You can change a cos. You can change a cos to be a sine, or you can change a sine to be a cos. Remember, in our simplification, it is possible. So you can either leave your answer like this, because this one is not like a proof. A proof is the one, guys, that you're supposed to be worried to say, there is an answer that I'm given. I'm supposed to write my answer like this. There is an answer that you are given, and your answer is supposed to be written something like this. We are supposed to note the difference. But if you are to write, let's say you are to present this simplification that we are having here. All right. So let me choose this way. Guys, you must be careful here. This was what? This here was negative here. The sine x of minus 360 is this one. x minus 360 is the first quadrant. So it's positive. This one is negative. So there we have got a negative. This does not give you a 1 here. This cannot give you a 1. As we are looking into this question, we cannot get a 1. Remember, we simplified before. We simplified this part, the negative that we had. There is negative. The positive to negative is negative. So we are supposed to have our answer like this. If it was a plus here, if it was a plus, that's where we can say our answer is what? Our answer is 1. That's where you can say our answer is 1. So I hope we are together, guys, on this part. If you've got a question, let's communicate. But this is what we have in the first quadrant, theta minus 360. It's positive, all right? And this one, the x minus 180, theta minus, it's what? It's a negative. Because we are talking about what? Theta minus 180 in the third quadrant for tan. So sine there, sine will be what? Will be negative. So please be careful there. It's not positive 1, this one. No. If you want, if it was a proof, like I say, they can change a sign to a cos or a sign or a cos to a sign. So it depends with the question. So in this case, guys, I cannot say, let's change a cos to a sign because it's not a proof. It's a simplification. We can leave it here as far as possible. But that's not a 1. All right, that is not a 1, that one. We can see it together, guys. We can even prove it that together, guys. We can see that's not a 1 there. All right, let's see on number 3. We can have this one. This is 1 as it is. Just leave it like that. Minus. Remember, guys, once you see a squared, whether it's a positive angle, whether it's what, but being squared, it is going to remain as what? As a positive. So that's sine squared of x. All right, over what? The cos of x minus 180, that's a negative angle. Theta minus 180. It is the third quadrant. It is tan, which is positive. Cos is what there? Cos will be negative. We are dealing with cos. So cos is going to be negative. That's negative cos x times cos x minus 360. We do the same thing. X minus 360. We are back again, guys, here. The first quadrant. Cos is what? Positive. We are in the first quadrant. Sorry, we're in the first quadrant. So cos there is what? Positive. So that's cos of x. So that's it, guys. We can simplify 1 minus and minus. This is going to cancel negative, negative, guys. It's going to give us what? A positive. So we are going to have the sine squared of x over cos times cos, which is the cos squared of x. Remembering that sine over cos is what? It's tan. So if you're given sine squared over cos squared, it means it's what? Tan squared. So we are going to have 1 plus tan squared in our simplification. This is what we are going to have at the end. So you're supposed to have the simplification in as much as you can, guys. Just try to figure out question that you are given. All right, questions that you are given there, try to figure out how to simplify. And we can also even have it as a single fraction if you wanted. You can have it like this, or you can have it as a single fraction. Maybe you simplify this way, because someone might ask at this stage here to say, what if I simplified it this way? 1 plus the sine squared of x over cos squared of x, like this. We say this is over 1. So remember, 1 over 1. So we can have 1 over 1 as what? Cos squared. So it will be cos squared of x over cos squared of x plus what? The sine squared of x over what? Cos squared of x. All right. So we know that if the denominators are the same like this, we can simply combine the numerators together. So it will be cos squared plus what? Sine squared. So you're going to have cos squared of x plus the sine squared of x, which will give us what? Remember your identities. This is what? This is 1. So it's 1 over cos squared of x. You can even leave it like this as a single trig. If you are to separate, you can have it like this. It's still 1 and the same part that you might have on your final answers. All right. So let's revise, guys. You can have it either way. It is in your hands. This one, let us see. Let us see the other part. It is question form. Let us see, guys. We've got negative angle. That is all right. So on question number 4, you're going to have what? That's 1. Okay. Plus, this is sine minus x, guys. This is a negative angle. Remember, in the 4th quadrant. So that is negative sine there. So it was going to give us a negative sine of x. Positive, negative is what? It's negative over what? Once we've got a squared, whether it was going to be positive or negative, we know it will be just cos squared there. So that's cos squared of x. All right. We can say it's in simplest form, but guys, remember that the cos squared here was, from our change of subject, we said is what? 1 minus the sine squared of x. So we can substitute here. This is 1 minus the sine of x over what? The cos squared, remember, is what? 1 minus the sine squared of x. Where we have got a difference of 2 squares. Remember, this is the same as what? 1 squared. So we can apply our difference of what? Our difference of 2 squares. So it means we've got 1 minus sine x into what? 1 plus the sine of x. Remember, your a squared minus b squared, which is a minus b, into a plus b, your difference of 2 squares. Where these two can what? Can cancel. This is 1. So it is going to give us 1 over what? 1 times this bracket. It is going to remain as it is, 1 plus the sine of what? 1 plus the sine of x. Just like that. So it's a simplification. You are not given an answer, yes, but try to have your answers in simplest form as far as possible. So your as far as possible might not be as far as possible, guys. So you have to simplify, because remember, there are questions under a proof where you say you are done simplifying, but you say, no, you haven't started. There's another part to be done. All right, on number 5, here we're given tan of x minus 180 as a negative angle. All right, x minus 180. This is the 3rd quadrant for tan. So tan there is what? Positive. So that's the tan of x times, oh, sorry, that's a plus here. So that's plus the sine of 180 degrees plus x. That's a positive angle there, 180 plus. These are positive angles. In the 3rd quadrant, we are talking about a tan there. Tan is positive, but this is sine. So sine is what? Negative. Negative. Cos of minus x, guys, we talked about this one. This is a negative angle, but in the 4th quadrant, cos is what? Cos is positive. Everything over a squared. Don't even bother to find out what was it. Just write the sign as it is squared. Because when you square a negative, it becomes a positive. So guys, do not even bother there. So let's simplify. We're going to have the tan of x plus and minus. That's minus. This is sine of x, cos of x, everything over what? The sine squared of x. Remember, we are supposed to simplify as far as possible in case that there's a simplification. And as we can see, there's a tan. Remember that tan is given as what? Sine of x over cos x. So it will be sine of x over cos of x minus the sine of x, cos of x, like this. So this is simply like over 1. So guys, for us not to have any mistake, let us just introduce a bracket and say divided to what? To sine squared x. Divided to sine squared x. So it is same as what? Sine squared of x over 1. So that we can properly apply our subtraction there, having the same part here, combining like to have a same, the single fraction. It can help us, guys. So what are we going to have? Our LCM or LCD of cos and 1 is going to be cos of x. Then we divide cos and cos, going to be 1 times sine, which is the sine of x minus cos. And this one was going to cancel. It was going to be cos times the numerator. So it was going to be sine of x cos squared x. All right. Divided to sine squared of x. All right. This is where we are, where the sign is common here, so you can factor it out from the numerator. All right. I just hope we are not like moving on one thing, guys. We're not like moving on the same part. So factor out the sine of x, we're gonna have what? Cos squared of x here. Everything over what? Over the cos of x. Remember, we've got a division here. This is semi like over 1. Here it's now a single fraction. So when you have a single fraction, introduce what? A multiplication here. The moment you introduce a multiplication, you must what? Interchange that fraction. So you'll be having 1 on top. So it'll be 1 over sine squared. This is where we are. All right, let's simplify and see. Here we have got something interesting. Sine over cos gives us what? We know that sine of x over the cos of x is what? Is tan. This is our tan, remember? So you're going to have the tan of x into what? All right, 1 minus cos squared, guys. Are we going to repeat this? No. We cannot keep on repeating this, guys, because we know that sine squared of x is equal to what? 1 minus cos squared of x. From what? From sine squared x plus cos squared x is equal to what? We can make sine squared the subject. So it means wherever we see this 1 minus cos squared, this one, as long as we see this, we are going to substitute with what? A sine squared. So that's a sine squared here. Sine squared of x times 1 over what? The sine squared of x. This is a multiplication, same as we've got over 1 like this. Same as we've got over 1 as a fraction. So that we can cancel, guys, where it is what? Where it is applicable, we can cancel. So, guys, let's just hope it's going to affect. So it was going to give us a tan. So, guys, the answer there was going to be what? A tan of x. As you can see, guys, it just ended like that. So this is it, guys, till we meet again.